Hey friends, Christine here. In this video, I'm going to show you, I've been asked by several people, how do I do my tins? How do I finish my tins? You know, I did a few videos last week about upcycling Altoids tins. And as you can see, I have plenty to show you and a whole variety, all sorts of things. I also used my magic mix of my own homemade Mod Podge. And in this video, I'm also showing you a new, I don't want to call it improved because this one is fine and good and perfect for certain things. But this one is also fine and good and perfect for other certain things. So we're going to do that. I'm going to show you how to use Mod Podge and paper to use on this sort of really brittle antique paper that you just rips if you bend it. And this might be true of book pages. That's actually newsprint, but you know, if you've got book pages that are really brittle, I'll give you a very simple technique for just using them, and you're able to make tags and pockets and cards and whatever. And then I'm going to show you a simple technique for using these 1980s Free American Heart Association cards that can be had for dirt cheap at tag sales and whatnot, and how to use a little Mod Podge and some tissue and get some really pretty, not shiny things that are more in keeping, at least with my aesthetic. So all of these, what is this? Oh, all of these is what we're, this is what we're doing today, and I hope that it's something you can use. I think the tins come out beautiful. They're almost like glass, and I'll show you how I get it smooth, and that seems to be the big question on getting the brush strokes out of your Mod Podge. So let's see how it's done. I'm going to talk a little bit today about Mod Podge and the great things you can do with it to use up some of your stuff that maybe you don't have another use for. So for example, I have a whole box of these flashcards. I don't know where I got them, but I don't like them. They're ugly. They're real modern, kind of Bauhaus looking, and I don't necessarily like the feel, the aesthetic of it. So what I did is I took some very fragile newsprint that I have from 1938. You see, I have a whole month of every day from 1938, and it's really very fascinating because when you read it, it's all about World War II and Hitler, and it's just starting, and it's crazy. So there's certain pages I have not been able to bring myself to cut up, but this was not one of them. But as you can see, and you all know this kind of paper, I mean, just touching it rips it. I mean, it's just nothing you can do with it. But there is actually something you can do with it. And that is to take another piece of paper that you don't love. I'm going to move this for now. I'm going to use this magazine. And I'm using my original favorite Mod Podge formula, except I have a new one that I'll show you later and I might like even more. But for this, we're going to use this version. That was a big truck hauling a big truck. Okay. So all we have to do is spread Mod Podge on the card. And then pick it up. Alright, so I'm going to try and get some part of these advertisements down here. Maybe not necessarily in straight like that. So I'm going to shoot for that area. I'm just going to put it down and press. I have no idea what I got. If I weren't trying to do this on camera, I would probably put it up to a window. Alright, so then just give it a nice rub. I think I might have gotten it, or at least some of it. And then we cut. We just trim. do this with a knife. I will do this with a knife because my hands are giving me issues today. Yeah, we thought it was all good, and it is good. It's much better, but some days they just say, no, we don't want to play with you. There. There we go. So now I took a little bit of it off. It hasn't happened that way before, but of course the camera's running, so now I've got this card, and I can knock that off as well. So then what I do is I put a little on this side, and this really seals the deal. And this formulation of mine is really, it's a nice thin light medium. So it goes on quickly and easily, and it dries quickly. And also this, it responds very well to being dried. So I'm going to do that. All right, that's pretty dry. So now you can see it has curled a little, and you can stick this as is under a book and let it do its magic with weight. But what I'm going to do is simply do the other side, and that's going to make it curl back around the other way. Same thing. Nice thin coat of any Mod Podge that you like. I tend to stay away from glossy ones, but that's just me. And now I'm just going to lay down my brittle paper. Pick it up. I keep trying to clean the paper, keep it clean. And then trim. I could keep using that. Now I'm going to dry this side. And it needs to dry a little bit more, but it flattened right back up. So let me try this side. All right, so now I do want to coat this side that I just glued on, just again to protect the paper itself. And this does a great job of that. So just a nice thin coat. You could put on as many layers as you like. For some of my other projects, I put on way many more layers. For this, you really only need one. Okay, so it's still a little sticky. Okay, so you saw you can kind of just watch it dry. So then give it a minute while it's cooling now that it's been wet. And you can see what I did is I use these. Now I put more coats on here. This is just one coat each. I think I put probably 3 coats and then steel wooled in between layers. And that gives a really hard finish and takes off any of the brush strokes. But now on this paper you can see there is no brush strokes. It's perfectly smooth. Because it soaks right into the paper. So if you've got book pages, or as I do, that newspaper, it's a great way to use it up. And now I'll let this dry, and then I will collage further with it, and then cut it down to tag size, or maybe pockets. Could definitely be a pocket in a journal. You know, do a little thumb hole. So one idea to do with Mod Podge. The next idea is, keep this out because I'm going to use that. I have, for example, and you might too, this box of pretty cheesy 80s free, mainly birthday cards or greeting cards. They're all sorts of occasions, and most of them are pretty in terms of design, but there are parts of them that are nice. So for example, here's one I did where I took sewing pattern and Mod Podged it onto one of these otherwise glossy and not very exciting greeting cards. So let's pick one. Let's do this one. Alright, so what I'm going to do is Mod Podge this and put the tissue on it. Now you can use tissue, you can use, sewing tissue like this, regular tissue in any color, or you can use napkin tissue, like the inner layer, the layer that you don't use when you're Mod Podging actual napkins. You know, when you're using the pretty part, you can save the less than pretty part and do this same technique. So we'll do it here with this because I want to tone down this white, and this will do it. So same thing. I'm just going to spread Mod Podge on the whole thing because I'm going to use the whole card. See all that glossy stuff just going under the glue. And that'll be even better after I put some tissue on it and get rid of it all together. Okay, let's turn this. And now I'm just going to take a piece of tissue. I'm not going to worry about any creases. I'm just going to lay it down and press. I can smooth things out while I work, while it's wet. You do want to be careful. You can rip the tissue, but it's usually not a big deal if you do. And I can feel the Mod Podge seeping through. And anywhere where it's not sticking, just go ahead in and add a little more, particularly the corners. And I'm going to go over this whole thing now with another layer, and I won't even let it dry. Same thing. Alright, so we're going to give that a second or two, or a minute or two to dry. And we'll help it along, because we can. I'm going to let this finish drying on its own. And you can see it's still a little glossy, so it has a ways to go. Oh, what the heck. Let's hit it again. Okay, so this corner still needs to dry. So essentially, you just want to look for any place that's still shiny. There's a little shiny part up here. I don't know if you can see it, but right there. So now it's pretty dry. It's got a beautiful finish on it in that it looks almost coffee stained. See? Very nice. And now we just trim. So what I normally do, well, there's still some wet spots. Why don't we give it a second? Patience, Christine, patience. Okay. Nope. Still wet down here. But I'm going to go ahead and cut this. So now I'm going to flip it over. And same thing, I'm just going to go along the edge. So now, what I might normally do, in fact I think I will because this is nice, is I do the other side. So here we have this happening on the other side, and I'm probably not going to use that way. Although I'm looking at this, I'm like, this would be a great side pocket and a journal page. Let me see how big it is. I think it would be lovely. Yeah, it's sort of screaming to be that. So I'm not going to do the other side of this because I don't need to, because the way I'm going to insert this, I am going to just glue it down. So what I will do with this, let me move this out of the way, is I'm going to cut this in half on the seam. And I'm actually going to wind up trimming both sides of this, but we're going to use that later. Now I have this side, and I'm going to take a can and make a nice rounded corner on here. And try not to put my head in the way while I do it. No, it didn't want to come off yet. And you really should wait for the Mod Podge to dry fully before you start mucking with it. There we go. Okay, so now I've got this really cute from an ugly birthday card. And these are the kind of cards that you get, I don't know, I got them at a tag sale for like $1 for that whole box. But, you know, the American Heart Association sends them out for donors and stuff. So typically you can find them in a lot of places. Now this is giving me other ideas. I'm going to ink this up. I wonder though, how fun could it be? All right, I'm not going to put this in my journal yet. I might do something else to it. So now we've got this. Okay, so now this could be used on the other side. We could leave it white. We could apply more tissue, as I did here. So I'm looking at this thinking, all right, well, I can take parts of this and wind up with 3 different products. So I'm going to move this down, let's say to about there, and slice it. There's one. I'm going to move it on this side, because I don't necessarily need a happy birthday tag, but I might one day, right? In somebody's journal or a happy mail. So there's that. Okay, so I can hold on to this. I can do something to the back. For this, very simply, what would I do? I would do this. This is going to become a pocket on some journal. So I'm going to trim off that edge. There's a crease there from where the card folded originally. And it's too messy and too orderly to be enjoyed. So you've got to be one or the other, not both. I see I have a little extra here. I'm going to trim that. There we go. Now I'm going to grab a chomper. Kind of line it up by eye. And there we go. And then of course glue, ink. But now we've got the foundation for a really cute little pocket that can go anywhere. in a journal. And it's got a nice butterfly on it and some pretty flowers. So again, you could even make this into the tag that goes in it. And same thing. This one, just do a little corner rounding, pop a hole. Oh look, we could even use that. Pop a hole. This one's a little long from that. Let's see, what color? Take this. Hey, what happened to my tag? Now we put this through here. And there you go. A bookmark, a tag. If it were a tag, I'd probably shorten up the string a little bit, but how easy was that? And again, just using cruddy little glossy greeting cards. So that's another idea for Mod Podge. Now this, same thing. We'll do something with that at another time. Okay, so that's another idea. Things that you can do with these. We've got a tuck spot or pocket. We got a pocket and a tag, and they all came from one kind of crappy greeting card. I say crappy, it wasn't my taste. It's not one I would send. How's that? And that's how I feel about a lot of these. Like this one. I love that it has birds in a cage and stuff, but it's like 1980s, blah, blah, blah. So here, you can also use the back side and just cut this part off. It's got some really pretty things in it. So it's different ideas that you can get from using these. Again, use your imagination and remember to always look at parts of things. Like when I look at this, I'm like, no. But if I just look at that, well, that's kind of nice. So that's my suggestion for today for other ways to use Mod Podge. And it's the only way I think I would probably use most of these cards. So there you have it. Mod Podge your old cards. Alright, so I'm back again with this card, which was the very modern flash card onto which we put old brittle book pages, or newsprint in my case. Now we are going to do each side again, and I'm just going to do one side on camera, although I always change my mind. But I am going to now add more Mod Podge to seal the outside of this paper. And I'm going to dry it on a fresh page. So one thing I've learned in using this method to dry Mod Podge or any glue like this is to not actually touch it until it's cooled down, because your fingers will lift off the dried glue because it's not fully cured. So just know that. So now I can touch it, it's cool. So now I'm going to go ahead and do this side. So again, if you do both sides, you won't have any warping. Okay, so again, you don't want to touch it on this side until it cools. Then, when that happens, I can put it outside, that's for sure. It's very cool today. Alright, so now we are pretty much dried and good. So what I would do if this were mine, and this is I would take steel wool to it, just like I would any other Mod Podge project. And I would do that because you can get a really lovely finish. It's smooth, it knocks it down. Now this paper has absorbed a lot of the Mod Podge, so that's excellent. So now you can see, yeah, I mean the smooth, I know you can't feel it, but the difference between this side and this side is amazingly different. So I'm going to now do the other side. So now again, you can't feel it, but it's like so smooth and good. It's almost like fresh, newly minted paper. So this can become tags, pockets, anything you want. The other thing I did with a bunch of it the other day, if it's here, not sure where I put them. Oh, here they are. Is I just took that same vintage newsprint and Mod Podged it to plain paper. This way I can use it to do the inside of Altoids tins or whatever. And it's a nice smooth finish. I did both sides. I put it on the paper and then I did one coat over the front. So that's how I do it. And next I'm going to show you how I actually do it on a tin. So a couple of things. Many of you, I'm sure, have seen my Sparkbird Mod Podge mix video, and I love this mix. I do. However, in playing around with it further, I came upon this mix, which I also love, but it's a little bit different. The ingredients are a little bit different. I will share that at the end of this video. So a couple of things about that, about this mix. One is somebody had asked, will two journal pages stick together that have been Mod Podged? And I've never sealed entire journal pages, so you're going to have to do your own tests. But what I did do is I took this artwork and I sealed the whole thing, and then I let it dry fully and put it under a book press with about 20 pounds of weight and left it there overnight, and nothing stuck. Like even now, nothing sticks. It's only with one layer of it though, so again, you're going to have to do your own testing, but it's very promising for that kind of application where you want to seal a journal page and don't want it sticking to something else. So again, I feel like I have to keep saying I haven't done huge tests on actual journal pages, but it did not stick to regular paper. Okay, so now a few people have asked, well, how do you do your tins? And I do them probably like you do or everybody else does, and I will show you that method now. So I have a new piece of artwork here I'm going to put on here, and before I do that, the first thing I like to do, now this is an actual purchased tin. All of these were done on actual Altoids. Well, this one wasn't. That was not an Altoids tin, but the rest were. And this is done on the bottom of one that I'd already done, an actual Altoids tin. Now this, I wish you could touch this. It is so smooth and perfect that I can't even stand it. It feels like metal. It feels like it was painted on the metal. Same with this one. Feels like it was just painted right onto this metal. And that I did by doing this. First thing I do is I take the tin and I scuff it up a little bit with some steel wool. And I do that for a few reasons. Certainly if it's an Altoids tin, I don't want it to look freshly painted. I like when it looks a little beat up. So I do it and some of the surface comes off, which is good. For these, not much changes, but it breaks the seal. It breaks the sealer that's on here already and gives the glue something to attach to. Okay, so that's well and good there. Clean this off. And now I'm using mix number 2, and I will put the recipe for this at the end of the video. Mix number 2, I'm just going to smear it all over. See, it's thicker than my original mix. And I like my original mix because it's not thick. But this one has equal benefits from being thick as the first one had from not being thick. How's that? And now we're just going to stick this on. And you always want to make sure, if you care, that your tin is opening the right way. So in my case, ta-da, it is. And now I'm just kind of arranging it, positioning it to where it fits. These are a little bit different proportions than actual Altoids. Okay, so now I'm going to leave this here. I'm going to grab a piece of scrap paper just so I can burnish this without affecting the artwork. Alright, number one. It looks good. I like the alignment. Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so now I just go right ahead and give a quick coat. So now I've realized in my experiments that one quick coat will not smear your artwork. So you don't want anything more than that. You can take off what's extra and let that sit for a second. Now, both these formulas respond really well to being dried. So I'm going to dry layer number one. And you get to watch it happen, but luckily in fast motion. All right, so that was layer number one. Number two, if you're counting the glue down layer, which I'm not. So now, let me make sure that there's no real shiny spots there. Do you see any shiny spots? I do not see any shiny spots. Again, letting it dry before you touch it, cool before you touch it, because it's basically been dried, but when it's still kind of gummy and warm, you can lift up the glue. So now I'm going straight to number two, layer number two in my mind. And fuzz it all over everything. And guess what? We're going to dry it. All right, so now it's important that we actually let this cool. It's mainly dry, but it needs a few minutes on its own. So I'm going to set it down and come back to it. All right, let's have a look. It feels pretty good. Pretty cool and dry. It doesn't feel tacky. My fingers, nothing is sticking. So this is where we begin to do the finessing with more. This is 000 steel wool. And I'm going to basically just burnish this and smooth out all of the brush strokes. And for my use, the sponge brushes work really well for this. And I go in a circular motion to try and get all of the brush strokes to leave so that it feels smooth and lovely and silken. And I don't know how long to tell you to do it. You kind of just get a feel for it. Okay, so now it's already, it's already beautifully smooth. You could stop here. I'm not going to, but you could definitely stop here. I'm going to add another layer or two because I like that really hard feeling layer. So you do definitely want to wipe it off and blow on it maybe, because the steel wool is everywhere. I typically do this over the garbage when I'm alone. All right, you know we're gonna dry it. See, can you see all the steel wool on there? I'm gonna dump that. And one thing you don't want to do is what I'm doing, which is dipping a brush right into your glue jar. And you can see in here, or maybe you can't, that some steel wool has gotten into the jar and it rusts, but I can work around that. All right, so I'm going to dry this layer. All right, so one thing I could mention here while this cools, because I shouldn't touch the artwork, is throughout this process you could be adding things in each layer and decoupaging a collage. So here you can see I used a piece of the newsprint that I had stuck to regular paper, and then I used a pressed fern and then a little tag. And this is all under here, and it's like glass. I mean, it's really super smooth. So you could be layering things up as you go. Let's see if we can get back in focus here. There we go. All right, so let's see. Yeah, you feel fine. So I don't even wait. Just go for number 2. And if you're not drying it with a heat gun, you might leave 15-20 minutes in between. All right, so again, you can just feel it's beautiful and wonderful. So truth is, I should have probably let this dry a little bit more in between. So this last layer, which I think is going to be my last layer, I'm going to do that. I'm going to let it dry on a little bit longer and get harder. But you know the drill. I try and go in opposite directions. So I think last time I went up and down, so this time I'm going to go this way. And come around, take off any excess. So this now I'm going to let sit here. I will come back and dry it more, but then I am going to let it sit for a few minutes. All right, so I know you saw how it became dull. It went from glossy to dull, and this was a very thick coat that I put on, and I'm going to let it be the last. You'll see, I think you can see it, when you see it like this, you get a little bit of the reflection of the light, but if you see it like this is how beautiful it is. So you can still see my brush strokes in that last one. Well, just you wait. We'll get rid of those. So I'm going to put this away because I don't think I'm doing more. And now I'm going to let this dry up. I'm going to let this dry and go wash my brush and come back and give that a final scrub. Okay, how many minutes did I say I was going to let this sit? Feels pretty cool. Yeah, no, I'm going to let it sit a little bit more because I feel like I could actually dent it a little, dent the glue a little. But look at how pretty. So now we're just going to get those brush strokes out and it's going to feel like glass. At least that's the hope. So I'm going to let it sit longer, but I'll be back. And I wanted to mention that this is the steel wool I'm using, a 00. I said 000, but it's 00. And I don't know what this cost. I've had it forever. I use it for all sorts of woodworking, wood finishing things, and Mod Podge. All right, so it's been sitting now for a bit. A lifetime in Christine's world. So now we're just going back at it with the steel wool. And I'm pressing really hard here, so don't be shy about it. We really want to knock down those brush strokes. Yeah, I've got 4 coats right on here, so we're pretty well protected. The artwork is protected. And now it's starting to get that lovely feel. Let me use another piece of fresh. Oh yeah. So nice. Oh, it's beautiful. I don't know if you can tell how beautiful it is from where you're seated. But it's smooth, there's no brush strokes, and I can go at it a little bit more. And again, I'm really pressing hard on this. And now you can see it's just kind of gliding over the, oh, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Another thing I'll mention is that if you have these little sanding pads, these guys, okay, they work great too. This is just a little craft sanding pad, and you go on it, and it takes off all the brush strokes, and it levels everything down to one lovely, perfect layer. So now if you touch it, it's like magic. So that's how I do it. It's nothing overly exotic, but it does yield some really great results. And because I'm weird, I might go at it once more with one more coat, because it's almost like glass feeling now, but I feel like one more coat that I let actually dry on its own might be just the ticket. But it doesn't need it. It really doesn't need it. You could have stopped at one. I mean, feeling it now, it's like absolutely, I don't know, can you see? It's just like, it's like paper that's been on there forever. So there you have it. Now what I will do is finish up the inside. Let me get rid of this. And to do that, what will I do? I'm going to use a piece of this, and I thought I'd already pulled one out. This is the paper that I just did the technique with, using just plain paper and old vintage paper that needs a new home. So I could do this one. Not really sure. Or I have all of these to choose from that go with this kit. So I don't know. I'll pick something and I'll show it to you later. How's that? Because I'm not in a deciding mood, and I can't be made to be in a deciding mood until I want to be in a deciding mood. So there you have it. Go create the awesome. Oh, I meant to tell you the new recipe, the new formula for the new and improved Mod Podge. Actually, it's not improved. It's different. So there's this original version, and then we use that one on the paper that was just becoming paper things, and it works great. It's light, it goes on fast, it's quick drying, it responds well to being heat dried, and it doesn't stick. Like I'm not making it stick, even though I'm putting it together. You still have to do your own testing if you're going to be sealing entire journal pages. But so this I did a video on, and I'll link to it and you can go see that. And this is just the same method, which is just basically mixing stuff together, but a little bit different proportions and a different ingredient. So for this version I used school glue, and for this version I used this glue all. So I used a half cup of this glue. Then I used 3 tablespoons of this water-based polyacrylic clear coat. 3 tablespoons. That's more than I used in the original. And I used about an ounce of water, or an 1/8 cup of water, and just mixed it up. And it is definitely thicker than this. I think the combination of more top coat in it and a different formulation of glue, but it works great. There's no yellowing. It's beautiful and perfect. So I would try both. I would mix up both. I mean, especially if you're going to buy this, you might as well. This is the most expensive part of the deal, but it's so worth it, because I've never been able to get Mod Podge to come out this smooth, and I like it smooth. So there's the recipe. Go create the awesome.